Hey guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter, and today we're going to be taking a look at this. This has been my favorite camera setup for shooting videos here on YouTube. I've been using it for almost every single video and have been loving it. A couple of people have asked about it, so I thought I'd go ahead and break down why I'm using this camera, which is the Panasonic GH5s, and this setup, and go over some of the parts and things I've been using. So I'm quickly going to show you the camera, and then we're going to break everything down and rebuild it from scratch. Couple notes. First, we're using the GH5s. I know a lot of people are going to be saying, but Caleb, why aren't you using the GH5? It has better in-body stabilization and a bunch of other stuff. Well, the S has been awesome to use for a couple reasons. Number one, and this is the biggest one, is a larger sensor, or at least more field of view. If you shoot with this camera right next to the GH5, you'll notice that it's much wider on this camera. And when you throw a speed booster at it, things get pretty interesting. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is I don't do a ton of gimbal or handheld stuff. And even doing handheld on this camera with this setup is awesome. So yeah, it's on a tripod a lot of the time, facing me, getting some B-roll, and with this rig, you can get some really, really smooth handheld stuff without needing that in-body stabilization. The final thing is, you know, why wouldn't I use something like what we're filming with right now, the Sony a7 III? And the reason for that is pixel quality. The files you get off of this camera compared to a lot of the Sony cameras is incredible. You can push things around so much. In fact, I have a friend who shoots RED, and he compared a bunch of cameras before going on a huge trip, including the a7 III, and he went with the GH5s as well. Just because those who really start to get in there and do some grading quickly realize that this 10-bit 422 camera is pretty phenomenal. So with that out of the way, here's the camera. It's on a grip. It has a little cage on it with some handles and things, and a couple other little fun things that we'll jump into. So what I'm going to do now is tear this down just to the camera body and start building up this setup, and I'll go over each of the parts. All right, so I've stripped everything down to the camera and the lens. Now, right away, I'm going to talk about using a Metabones speed booster. With a speed booster like this one, which is the Ultra version, essentially 0.71 reduced crop factor, you're getting bigger than Super 35. So this setup right here will make the sensor essentially be larger than an A6500, kind of in between the A6500 and what you're looking at right now, a full frame 35mm sensor, which is incredible. A couple other options. You could get the XL version of the Metabones adapter, which would give you close, very close to a full frame sensor on this camera, and that's just need to get one of those and try that out. Another option is to save a whole bunch of money and to buy the Viltrox EF-M2. This is essentially a under $200 Metabones speed booster for your GH5, GH5s, and all this stuff will work with the GH5 as well. So if you're not on board with the S, no problem, you're totally set. The lens I'm using is the legendary Sigma 18-35. Just a great lens for this style setup, and for YouTube, it's pretty much perfect. You'll also notice right here, we have a really, really nice eye loop or eye cup. This is from Gorilla. I believe it's called the G cup. I'll link to it in the description. And I love this thing so much for two big reasons. Number one, I wear glasses, and if any of you guys out there wear them, you also know how sucky it is to use the EVF on most cameras. With this thing, there's two great things about it. You can essentially not touch it to your glasses and still easily see what's going on. Kind of shades everything from the sun. It's great. The other is it's really soft, and because of that, you don't interfere with the display. So you'll notice here that I can very easily open and close the display without any issues. And if you use an EVF a lot, I highly recommend this thing. They also make them for the Sony a7 III and other cameras. So that's the camera setup with the speed booster and the lens. One big problem, we have a camera without in-body stabilization, and I've got hands where my pinky always slips underneath the camera. So we're going to solve that with a couple extra little bits of kit. The next thing, and one that's really awesome and only costs you $44, is this guy. This is an aftermarket battery grip for the GH5, GH5s. I got mine for $44. And it's pretty phenomenal. I have international links because I know some countries can't get it easily. So this is not the super expensive Panasonic version, and it just threads to the bottom of the camera, no battery door silliness, and now we've got a much more substantial grip for the back of the camera. The problem with a lot of these cameras is the batteries go in from underneath the camera. But with this new setup now, we have a little battery door on the side of the camera. So I can easily get in here, swap batteries, and we're good to go without having any problems. So you get a bigger grip, something you can really grab onto and hold and easily move the camera around, get some nice movement, a little more stabilization, and you can easily swap out batteries, which I just love. So this would be a great setup without any of the other stuff we're about to talk about. The grip, $50 roughly, eye cup is around 30, and then maybe a speed booster for the camera, and you could be done. I will note that underneath the camera on the grip here, you'll notice the 1/4-20 is not centered on the lens. I will have a link to a cheese plate that works perfectly to get that back into alignment if you just want to run with kind of this setup. But I'm going to add a couple other things here. The next thing is going to be adding a cage, which I damaged my table with. And what's cool about this cage is that it is a half cage, as you can see, or kind of a C cage. The beauty with a lot of these cameras is we have a nice grip already built in, so you don't want to, block that or inhibit it. With this guy, the camera simply slides right in, and you can still have full access to that nice grip, but still be able to mount a bunch of other stuff. So with this setup, there's only one bolt on the bottom that'll connect to the battery grip. So I'll go ahead and slide it in like so. And I'll go ahead and snug that up with a screwdriver. And now we can add a couple other things that make this really great for video. The first thing I'm going to add is a top handle. This is a top handle that's actually designed for RED cameras. It's a little more expensive because it's designed for RED, and that's just kind of how the video industry works. But you can buy a bunch of different models that are much more affordable. What I also love about this is a Nato compatible handle. So it actually comes with one of these guys, a really small little rail or rod thing that you add to the top of your camera. It's called a Nato safety rail. And this thing simply adds to the top. If it loosens up over time, it'll slide around, but it won't fall off. And it lets you quickly add and remove the handle. The next thing I'm going to add is this guy, which is a left-handed handle. The reason for this is there's a ton of right-handed handles, but again, we have this great grip on the camera. Why would we want to have another grip all the way out here? So I went out and finally found a good left-handed option. This is from, I believe, Camvate, and it uses rosettes. So you'll notice there's kind of a combo between a bolt and these teeth here. And I added a really cheap little receiver, which you see there, that just bolts onto the side of the cage. And it lets me easily add and remove that handle. So if you want to be kind of, compact like this, you're good to go. If you want something with a little more width and girth to your setup, you can go ahead and thread this on. I'll tilt it forward just a little bit and just tighten it down with my thumb. It's got some nice knurled knobs there. Boom. Now you've got a fantastic dual handle setup for getting those nice smooth shots. Again, you can remove it. You can still use the lens without any issues. And because I have it offset, as you can hopefully see there, this display or the flip out screen has no issues. So I can use the camera without any issues. Pretty much I'm always living right in here when shooting video. So that's the side handle. We got the top handle. Pretty much concludes the setup. There's one other thing I sometimes add, and it's kind of an easy thing to add and remove, and that's this. This is a eyebrow or top shade for your camera. This thing lets you get kind of that top eyebrow for your lens without using a matte box. So what I do on the cage, there's another female cold shoe there. So I'm gonna go ahead and thread this on, tighten it down, and now we have an adjustable little hood for our lens. And this is phenomenal because often I'll backlight products. That's kind of how I usually light things. And often, especially with vintage lenses, which I also love to use, you get a bunch of flaring. So with this guy, you can kind of tilt it down and just cut off that light from hitting your lens, move it out of the way, or just completely remove it when you're not using it. Love this thing. So this is the setup I've been using for several of my videos recently. Really digging it. I will have a review coming for the GH5s, as well as what I'm filming with and really the best competition, and that is the Sony a7 III. Two very different cameras, each with serious strengths and weaknesses. So stay tuned for all that stuff. Also, if you know you're getting a GH5 or GH5s, I've done a guide on both those cameras. So if you really want to dive in and learn everything there possibly is to know about shooting video on those two cameras, there's a guide that covers both of them very much thoroughly. You can check that out in the description below. Otherwise, you can watch fresh videos here at DSLR Video Shooter every single Tuesday with live streams on Wednesdays. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.